Welcome to Access Asia. I'm Yuka Royer. Our headlines this week. As a trial of former organisers of Hong Kong's Tiananmen vigils drew to a close, we speak with Wu'er Kaixi, one of the student leaders of the 1989 democracy movement in China. A Taiwanese post-colonial novel with a culinary bent has won this year's International Booker Prize. Its author hopes her work can be read in China to provide an opportunity for dialogue. And a North Korean football team show their prowess in the Asian Women's Champions League, bringing the world's most secretive nation into a global spotlight. Sport is the subject of decades of state-run investment. A court in Hong Kong heard final arguments in a trial against two former organisers of vigils remembering the 1989 Tiananmen massacre. Chow Hang-tung and Li Chukyang were charged in 2021 with inciting subversion under a national security law imposed by Beijing. For decades, their now disbanded group was the only one that led large-scale commemorations of the brutal crackdown. Rights groups view their prosecution and the disappearance of the vigil as emblematic of Hong Kong's decline in freedoms of speech. Now, Wu'er Kaixi was one of the founders of the student movement leading up to the 1989 Tiananmen crackdown. He joins us from Taiwan, where he now lives in exile. Thank you for joining us. Now, first of all, what do you think of this Hong Kong trial?
The disappearance of this vigil and then imprisonment trial against the organizers, unfortunately, is a very sad indicator for the losing of freedom in Hong Kong. If the world map is in two colors, one color represents the freedom, the other the enemy of freedom. The Hong Kong changed the color in the last less than 30 years. So it's a very sad situation, and then this happened before the eyes of the world. And I have to add that the world let this happen.
Do you think that the color has completely changed for Hong Kong?
Yes, completely. Yeah.
Now, China has spent the last 4 decades trying to make people forget the Tiananmen massacre. Has the communist leadership succeeded in doing that? Do you think the memory is fading?
The memory is fading for many different reasons. First of all, time. It was not really on our side to say, keep remembering this. And then, of course, the word of Tiananmen protests, June 4th, 1989, they all become taboo. They're all become like a sensitive world being very heavily filtered out from the public knowledge. But talking less doesn't mean people have forgotten. People are censoring themselves about this. They know talking about Tiananmen could get themselves into trouble. So that's the reality in China today. Very unfortunately, China is exporting this reality to Hong Kong, and then they have done successfully. Hong Kong is no longer the free city of the world. I'm conducting this interview in Taipei in the office of Reporters Without Borders. Reporters Without Borders have recently announced the Press Freedom Index of 2026. And then out of 180 countries, Hong Kong is ranked 140. When RSF, Reporters Without Borders, started this index, Hong Kong was ranked number 18. So Hong Kong was one region that deterred worst in the world press freedom. And then you can also name a lot of other categories of freedom that we are also seeing Hong Kong deteriorating. So come back to your first question, is Hong Kong changing the color completely? Absolutely.
And also under President Xi Jinping, China has been trying to squash cultural identities of ethnic minorities in Xinjiang and Tibet. You are an ethnic Uyghur yourself. Your thoughts on what's happening?
Under Chinese Communist Party's ruling, the world need to understand one thing, like from Communist Party's perspective, anybody who disagree with the government, even disagreeing with the narrative of the government, they're enemies. They need to be oppressed. So that I was saying that the Chinese government have been oppressing dissent, and then people trying to remember Tiananmen, and then people trying to remember their own identity, has been labeled by Chinese Communist Party as the public enemy. And they have done this, they have conducted their oppression with the world's appeasement. I could not find any other better word than this. So the world helped, joined the Chinese government, even you can say encouraged the Chinese government in those oppression.
Now, China has changed a lot since 1989. It's now a modern economic powerhouse. Do you think young people in China today could rise up and fight for freedoms like you did back then?
No, China has changed a lot, but China also stayed the same a lot. That is another fact the world conveniently finds to ignore. The China stayed the same, like in the aspect of oppressing dissent, then controlling how people should be thinking, how people should be talking about any public opinion. So if you remember, just a few years ago, when during the pandemic, the Chinese young generation have started this A4 revolution, we call it, white paper revolution. It's a political protest by simply holding a piece of A4 paper with nothing written on it. That carries a very strong political message that every Chinese people would understand. You don't need to put down any slogan on that piece of paper. Everybody already know that with the government censorship, you cannot, even when you cannot put down any slogan on that piece of paper, you can at least demonstrate holding a piece of white paper can also be considered as a crime in China. That is also a good remember to the world who is holding this appeasement policy to the Chinese Communist regime.
Well, Wu'er Kaixi, thank you so much for joining us on France 24.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It's a story of food, friendship, and colonial power. Set in the 1930s, Taiwan Travelogue explores the history of the island under Japanese occupation through the lens of travel and food. Its author, Yang Xuanzu, and translator Lin King were awarded this year's International Booker Prize, which recognises works of fiction translated into English. Antonia Kerrigan has more.
Yang Xuanzu's Taiwan Travelogue is a comment on Taiwanese aspirations, the fictional diary of a Japanese traveller discovering the island through its food, all this during colonial rule. The country won its independence from Japan in 1945, but today faces a new threat to its sovereignty, this time from China.
At the moment, it really isn't possible to buy this book in China. But I know there are still readers there who want to read it. If this book can, in one way or another, make its way into China and be read by Chinese readers, I think we would have an opportunity for dialogue and communication, and to allow more Chinese people to understand what kind of future Taiwanese people want, which is not quite what many in China imagine.
The Taiwanese president congratulated Yang Xuanzu and her translator Lin King for their achievement, a source of pride and an act of resistance for many in the country.
I've asked myself this many times, whether literature is too slow to make change, and I felt anxious about it. I often worry, often feel that maybe I should make political statements, or take some kind of action, engage in other forms of activism. But in reality, as a novelist, I've decided to put my faith in literature, to believe in the power of literature.
Written in Mandarin and first published in 2020, it was translated into English in 2024. The Booker Prize judge described the work as wryly sophisticated, blending romance with post-colonial critique.
And finally, a group of North Korean women stole the spotlight, clinching a 2-1 victory over a South Korean team in the Women's Asian Football Cup Champions League to make it to the final. In a rare visit across 38th Parallel North, the young footballers were greeted warmly by South Korean fans and offered a glimpse into decades-long efforts by Pyongyang to invest in women's football, a soft power tool that can boost the isolated regime's international profile.
Tickets sold out in hours and fans turned out in droves to this rainy Seoul stadium to watch the first North Korean sports team to play in the South in 8 whole years. North Korean Naegohyang dominated their hosts, Suwon FC, in a 2-1 victory.
It was an intense match, so I was fully focused on the game as the coach. But what I felt was there is a great deal of interest in football among people here.
The two countries have technically been at war since 1950, but the whole North Korean side were welcomed like guests of honour, and while their compatriots could not travel to see them play, the symbolism of the match was not lost on spectators in Seoul.
I came to support a peaceful Korean peninsula.
200 NGOs in South Korea have formed a joint cheering squad to warmly welcome our guests from the north, who are visiting after a long time, and to support the players of both teams.
The isolationist nation of 27 million is a dark horse in women's football, holding both the under-20s and the under-17s World Cup titles. The result of a government programme in place since the 1980s, bringing in foreign coaches, putting the sport in school curriculums, establishing full-time women's teams in the military, and offering VIP living conditions to top players and their families in the capital.
And that's all for this edition of Access Asia. Thanks for watching, and do stay tuned for France 24 for more news.